gold. He could be too far. No, he's digging. Oh, what a catch.
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Wu for the win. Team Canada. Darren Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Yo, Canada and the rest of the world, what's going on? You're listening to the Huckin Eh Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Theo Wan from Toronto, Ontario.
And I'm Danny Proby. I'm from Vancouver, BC, and we are your coast-to-coast guide to all things Canadian Ultimate. So, Theo, before we get into anything really important, I want to hear about you and what you've been doing Frisbee-related lately.
Yeah, Danny, I'm going to be honest with you. I played Tuesday and Wednesday in pods, of course. You know, in Ontario, we got the pods going on. So, no more than 10 people. But I went disc golfing the next day on Thursday, and I really just did not want to be disc golfing. My knees were kind of hurting or aching a little bit, and I felt it a little bit more than I usually do. And I think it just has to do with the age, you know, like I probably look really young, but in my 30s now, and it's like, man, is time catching up to me is what I'm thinking about here. So that's what I was thinking about all week, to be honest with you. Because I've been running a lot, but, you know, cutting on the field, Frisbee-related stuff is a little different. So for you, is that similar? Or like, what were you up to Frisbee-wise this week?
It's like you're literally describing my life. And so like this whole off season, I've been training a lot. I've been skipping, I've been running, I've been lifting a lot. Like I've actually been training more and better than I have most other years. But you're right. Like the difference between sprinting and playing ultimate is so different from all the other stuff that I played Wednesday, Thursday, and kind of started feeling tight in my adductors. And then on Sunday, I played again and to a place where I could barely walk after. And I played again this Thursday at traffic pod practices, and they both were like rocks at the end. So now I'm like having troubles walking. Oh, no. And so I'm feeling the age thing potentially. I don't want to admit that on the air, but maybe that's what it is. Or maybe it's just that we went through a pandemic and we haven't been playing much Frisbee, which I think is what I'm going to say. No. That's the real thing. It's not age. We're still young. We still got it.
I mean, technically I'm not master's age yet, so I'm going to go with the fact that I'm still got some years in the tank here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I know it'll be, when this airs, it won't be as relevant anymore, but it's Father's Day weekend. And in honor of Father's Day, Theo, I thought, and I explained this to you off air, and so I know you're ready, right? But we're going to be doing a dad jokes sort of competition. And so we're going to rate each other, but if you're listening to this, we would also like for you to interact with us and let us know who you think won the dad jokes competition, okay? We're both competitive, both athletes. Even if it's just joking, we still want to win.
Yeah, and
do you want to go first, Theo?
Well, before we even start, Danny, the one thing I will say is we talked about how we got our dad jokes, so this might also speak to like a generational gap here, because I chose to get my dad jokes off Google, which, you know, maybe that makes me more of a dad, because I feel like Danny, she got her jokes off TikTok, so that just like shows the generational difference here of how we got our jokes. So we'll preface that with the audience. I got my jokes off Google, literally just looked on a site that says best corny dad jokes for kids, so we're going with that. So my first one is going to be, there's a lot of choices. So let's go with my toddler. I don't have a kid, but, you know, my toddler is refusing to nap. He's guilty of resisting arrest.
Okay.
I mean,
like arrest, like sleeping.
Yeah, I know. This you get.
That's a dad joke.
You get what you get from Google, you know. So.
No, I know. Okay. Here's my first one. Where did the pirate captain get his hook?
A ship somewhere?
The second-hand store.
Okay, that's actually not bad. Let's
go.
I feel like that was a little bit better than mine. Okay. The wedding was so beautiful, even the cake was in tears.
Oh.
Not bad.
Okay.
I mean, now that you're adding questions into it, I got more choice here.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, you just answer the question yourself. That's part of the joke. But okay, so I like the vibe. Like, okay, so if I'm groaning, I feel like that is like a 10 out of 10 dad joke because that's the point. They're not supposed to be legitimately funny, I don't think. So
It's true.
I got a 8 out of 10 groan from this girl. So, okay.
All right.
Number 2. Russian nesting dolls are so full of themselves.
Well,
That's
yeah,
it. Do you know what Russian nesting dolls are? They're so full of themselves.
Yeah, I have actually. Fun fact. I know, I get it, but it's all right. It didn't really impress me, to be honest.
It didn't land.
Mainly because I looked at it very logically, and I was like, yeah, they are like in themselves. Fun fact is I have my own Michigan State like nesting dolls I got from Russia when I was there, and so there's like 5 Michigan State football players stacked in, right? So, yeah, I get the joke, but maybe I thought too logical on that one.
Okay, swing and a miss. That's fine.
Sorry. Okay, how about this one? I think you might actually get the answer to this question. So, why are balloons so expensive?
Why?
Inflation.
Okay. That's like dads love jokes about inflation too. So I feel like that's going to be a 9 out of 10
They do.
for me.
They look any money jokes right there.
Investments. Okay, this one's a bit off. So just like stay on the journey with me. But so the other day I was going to kill a spider, but Ari told me instead to take it out. And so we went out for nachos. Pretty chill girl. She wants to be a web developer.
What?
Take it out? Take the spider out? Like out for nachos? Come on. It's just,
I get the web developer part. Oh man, that was kind of confusing. I got confused.
You take. Well, it's too high. It's too high level. That's okay. That's okay. My last one will slay. So the kids say.
I'll give you like 5 out of 10, but I'll give my logic like 0 out of 10 because I really didn't like follow along as well.
Just like
so I'll give myself the fail there.
Took my spider out on a date. Anyways.
Okay, last one for me here. We don't want to, this whole show isn't going to be dad jokes, right? So,
yeah.
Why is Peter Pan always flying?
Why?
Because he never lands.
Okay, I have a really funny story. I have an ex-boyfriend who had Neverland as his charades thing that he needed to act out. And he was just kind of an interesting character. Anyways,
does he listen to the show?
Of course not. Not a Frisbee person.
Just checking.
So he was like jumping and like trying to like get this hang time or something. And he looked genuinely really concerned. And I was like, what is he trying to act out? And he was like, I'm trying to never land. And I was like, you do realize like, okay.
There's gravity.
It's a good family moment. There's gravity. So It's a science lesson on Christmas. Okay. My last one. So there was a storm last night and I lost 25% of my roof. Oof.
Letter joke. I get it. I like it. I'll back that one. That one I feel like I actually got. So I'll throw that.
Yeah, that was in the kitty section. That was in the kitty section.
Yeah, give me the kitty ones. Otherwise, I don't get them there. But anyways, we're now done the dad joke segment. I think we're not going to bore you with any more puns here on the podcast. So I know last week we said we're going to be like a health and wellness podcast. I think history as well, but we're definitely not entering into the comedic dad joke area. So don't worry about that for those in the audience. So Danny, we're going to head to the favorite part, not favorite part, maybe second favorite part, news. Let's go.
We now have breaking news.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here with the news. So as per usual, we're going to start with the West Coast, or the more west, and we're going to start with Whiskey Jack. So they are starting scrimmages and looking to do a 4v4 league that's going to be starting in the last week of June. So Ultimate's starting to happen in Calgary, which is very, very exciting. Monday and Thursday practices are now a go for Wild, also in Calgary, and they're having scrimmages, it's just like glorious. The second you get to step back on the field and actually play ultimate with marks and stuff, it's the best. Yeah. And Theo, what's happening in Edmonton with the women's team there?
Yeah, we got some flurries coming in for you. Oh, man, I thought we said we're going to stop the dad jokes, but I had to go with the pun there.
That was bad. That was
Flurry bad. Starting a competitive women's program for all ages, which is actually really cool in my mind. Like having a mix of juniors, the women's team, and masters all playing together. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool for cohesion and development as well. And in the group chat that we talk about, so once again, we're going to plug the group chat. If you're a team or someone on a team that's listening to this podcast that's not in the group chat yet, hit us up on Instagram and we can get you in the West chat because each chat's full. So, but in the West chat, there were the women's teams talking about running a prairies kind of tournament. So Fleury, Cora, Wild, those teams out in the prairies running something. So that'd be kind of cool. And we'd obviously update you with results if the tournament were to be a go. So that's pretty cool stuff there, Danny.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I would love to see like more tournaments happening for teams in Canada. It'd be great. So we're going to go even more west. I don't know why we did kind of the more east-west first, but this is how we're doing it today. It's a bit backwards, but in Victoria, we were mixing it up. In Victoria, girls and boys have been practicing twice a week, and yeah, they're doing their thing. Things are going well. And this past weekend, Red Flag had their first open tryout, and I was there. I was, as I kind of mentioned earlier, slightly injured. So I was watching and heckling and supporting all the kids and stuff that I've coached over the years that are now adults. And the tryout was extremely high level and it was really, really exciting. Some people looked quite out of shape, but like huge bids, huge skies.
That's just funny to me.
Yeah, it was pretty hectic. Just a lot of uncharacteristic drops because, of course, like no one's been playing. It's been a long time. And so I totally get it. But man, the effort was there. It was awesome. Their closed tryouts on the Monday, and I know Traffic's tryouts are Saturday, Sunday of the following week. So things are happening in Vancouver. And one thing that I did want to mention is that for the juniors programs, because I normally coach juniors teams, I'm coaching an Elevate kind of like grade 6 to grade 9 team. And I was hoping that they would get to play against kind of more of the regional junior club teams, but that's just not really a thing in Vancouver this year because apparently there weren't that many registrations for junior club in Vancouver. So they're only really doing 2 teams. And they also allowed 2020 grads. So the people who graduated from high school last year are actually invited to play this year juniors again because they missed out. And so just a lot less juniors playing ultimate in general. And that shouldn't come to a surprise to me, but it's just like it's reinforcing that people need to remind people why ultimate's great and that a lot of teachers and coaches that are working with kind of more grade 8s and 9s and 10s even need to start putting in the groundwork now if we want to get that sport back to a place where it was pre-pandemic. So just kind of an interesting thing happening in juniors. Like I still think that there's going to be teams in Surrey and North Van and Richmond still. These are all places in BC. I'm sure you know that, Theo. But yeah, not as many teams in Vancouver. So this is also a geography podcast. So yeah, that is my update from the east or from the west rather. So let's go to more east.
Yeah. And before we even started the news, speaking of geography, we admitted our mistake there on the Instagram.
Oh my God.
Not coloring a certain part of the map. But you know what? Apparently it's happened before. So, I mean, our condolences, our apologies to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. We had the right one initially. Yeah. It was just blurry. And so then I swapped it out for one that had a higher resolution and then it just left out Newfoundland. I know. God. I know. But you know what? Our amazing fans picked it up. They were right away responding on Instagram saying, this is what you could do better next time because you messed it up. And that's okay. It's this is also a learning podcast. So there you go. So now we're actually going to hit the news. So in Ottawa, we're going to kind of mix it all over the province here in Ontario, but also go out to Quebec and the East Coast. So in Ottawa, Rosie, and I believe, we're talking about this off air, but I believe they have masters and grandmasters. They were starting practices with pods of 10. The same goes for their mixed team Crank and Stella. And I believe Phoenix was doing that as well because I saw a story from someone who plays on Phoenix. So Phoenix/Outlaws, like there's something happening there as well. And we got an update from listener Ryan Muscle. He's a fan of the podcast. He's messaged us before. So we do appreciate that, getting messages from the listeners. So he said the Ottawa League's actually going to start in early July 5th to be exact. with divisions of 4, which is kind of cool that they're doing that, divisions of 4, so that, you play these 3 teams and there's contact tracing. Like, okay, I played with these people, so if something happens, then it's just a little bit easier than having teams or a league with like 16 teams in it. So that's kind of cool, and that's happening out there in Ottawa.
Yeah, speaking of Ottawa, I'm actually going to be visiting Ottawa during that time intentionally. So we're running programs for Elevate with Okua, so the local not-for-profit league there. And those programs actually started last week, but by July 5th, as you said, scrimmages will be allowed. So I'll be able to attend all the first practices where scrimmaging is allowed, and I'll be coaching, working with all of those coaches too. So a lot of our coaches are coming from teams like Stella and Phoenix. So it's pretty exciting. It's exciting that they get to scrimmage. It's exciting that the kids get to scrimmage now too. So that's my Ottawa news. But in Quebec City, they're starting to have tryouts with up to 25 people on the fields. And so rosters for Quake, Cube, and Quest should be starting to be announced probably by the next episode or the week after. And also Club M did their tryouts. There's pictures on their Instagram if you are curious, which we all love Frisbee photos, so you should go check it out. Yeah. And last update from me, but pods of 10 are also happening in Toronto for GT, Union, and for the Durham Buddies Hounds. What does Durham Buddies Hounds mean, Theo?
No, well, I threw that out because I thought I was going to say it. So I was going to say for our Durham Buddies Hound, and for some reason I put Hounds. So put some respect on the name, right? With Hound, because it's like 2 Ds or 3 Ds. I'm going to get roasted for this, but I think it's 2 Ds.
It's 2.
But it could be 3. It's 2?
It's 2.
Okay,
don't hold me to it. I've been wrong before.
Okay. Either way, we could be wrong, but we know it's Hound. It's more than like more than one of the last consonant. Same thing with Fox. So we got to figure that on our end. But
I don't think Fox would have 3 X's.
Yeah,
so I think
it's 2. It's got to be 2. It's 2. Okay. We're so smart solving it on the podcast. Great.
Yeah.
So next up, your 2019, I got to hype them up, of course, your 2019 CUC champions, Toronto Sixers. They got a tryout roster of 35. You're thinking, whoa, 35? That's a lot of people, but, they talked about this on their update. They're going to try to get people some more reps, and you don't know what people's comfortability levels are with playing, and then also people could be out and missing whatever for different reasons, and they're starting a fitness plan with Haddock Sport Performance, so that's really cool, getting people on board, getting that going and running as well. And we're seeing teams also, as we mentioned, Union and Hound earlier, but they're going to try to run or planning to run tryouts as Step 2 is allowed, or when Step 2 happens in Ontario, where you can have 25 people outdoors. So expect to see some tryouts happening too as well, Danny, in Ontario. That's super exciting because tryouts are definitely happening in the West Coast. So we're seeing that sweep into Ontario. So let's go. Excited about it. So also Crux out of Hamilton starting their own small pods. They're focusing specifically on conditioning and injury prevention. And I feel like every team should be doing this because, as you were saying, we were both feeling it. And you basically kind of got hurt is what you're saying. So
I don't want to go that far, but things are hurting.
Okay, good.
Things are hurting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So injury prevention, good thing. And then last but not least, we're going to head out into the East Coast. So I wrote this I guess I wrote it this way. All systems go. So it's all systems go there. They're in the second phase of reopening. So they can have 2 practices a week. This is the update from Madhouse and Red Circus. And they're hoping to have competitive league in mid-July as well. And then a team that we got added into the West chat, New Brunswick's Spawn Ultimate. They're starting to practice, scrimmage, and recreational leagues are starting as well. So you're not only seeing rec leagues start up and competitive leagues start up in Ottawa, but also out there in the Maritime. So that's pretty exciting stuff.
So something was recently announced. There's been some head coach announcements for Team Canada's, which is very, very exciting. So, Theo, did you hear the news about the World Games coaches? Because there's 2 of them, and they're both pretty good.
Yeah, we're definitely stoked to hear about that. And Carla DiFilippo from Ontario coaches Sixers, and Matty Bearzan, Matty B, as he's well known in Vancouver, out of Furious George, are your Team Canada World's Game coaches. So shout out to the committee that was a part of having to put that together. That's obviously a difficult decision to pick coaches. So congrats to those coaches. We're excited to see what Canada does at the World Games in 2022 in Birmingham, Alabama. And Danny, there's also some news out there in the junior ranks, the U20 level. So why don't you give the viewer/listeners the news for that?
Yeah, so Alex Lamb from Vancouver, BC, was just announced as the head coach of the Open team. Now, the women's coaches were already decided because we all just rolled over from the last time. So it's Willem, Conrad, myself, and Karen Hatch are coaching the U20 women's team. But Alex Lamb has now been announced as the head coach for U20 Open, and it's a great choice. Alex Lamb has been dedicating his life to growing juniors ultimate. He's like super involved. It's one of those stories that like sits close to your heart, and I'm really excited for him to have this opportunity.
That is your news of the week.
Yeah, it feels really good to see not just like one province opening up. It seems like there's exciting things happening all across our great nation, and I have high hopes that we're going to have some awesome tournaments to talk about this summer, and it's going to be great. Are you excited, Theo?
Yeah, I know you made that high hopes joke earlier off air, so whenever you say that, I just think about the Panic at the Disco song. So unfortunately, we don't have royalty rights to play that song when you say that, but
no.
For those listening, you can just imagine the high hope song playing in your head as she said that. So
yeah, it's a Panic at the Disc. Oh, dad joke. Frisbee dad joke. Okay, we're going to move on. Okay,
all throughout the episode.
Yeah, it's okay. Anyways, up next, we're going to be hearing from Morgan Hibbert and Sarah Bobak. But first, we're going to hear from our excellent and awesome sponsor, VC Ultimate. This episode is sponsored by VC Ultimate. Now, if you know me, or you've seen me on the fields, or you've seen me coaching, you know I'm repping VC Ultimate. VC is a company that proudly puts values and company before profit. VC is the world's best source for quality, design, and all of your ultimate needs. So check out VC to get your gear now.
This is Jordan Marin from the Toronto Sixers, and you're listening to the Huckin Eh Podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We have our main event, and we're going to be talking about CUC's World's Qualifying Year, all the wonderful things that happens with all of that. And we have Morgan Hibbert and Sarah Bobak on the pod with us today. We are very privileged to have both of you here. So let's start off with Sarah. If you could introduce yourself and maybe how people normally call you as well.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Also, thanks, Danny and Theo, for having me. It's really exciting. It's my first podcast. So I'm, my name is Sarah Bobak, but most people call me or know me as Bob. So I've been playing Ultimate for a very long time. I played at UBC and with Traffic a long time ago, and then moved back to Ontario and played with Capitals and now the Sixers. And I played on a few Team Canadas throughout the years.
No big deal.
So I've been I've been very, very privileged to be on those teams. They're great experiences, and happy to talk about World Qualifying years.
Amazing. All right, Morgan, how about you?
Hi, friends. Thanks for having me, and good to see you both again, and good to see you, Bob. My name is Morgan Hibbert. I'm in Vancouver, and I've been playing for about 2 decades now, and I've been a member of the national team program since 2004, and I've been a part of the past 3 World Games teams, so 09, 13, and 17. My current team is Furious George. And I first started playing with Furious in 2005 and still playing this year in 2021. So that's a little Cole's Notes version about me and my Frisbee history.
That is just like so impressive. Are you trying for World Games for this next term too?
Yeah, I'm going to try every year until they tell me no longer to show up.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's amazing.
So we're going to start it off. We're going to kind of get open-ended to get things going. So, Sarah, we'll start with you. Can you describe the concept of the World's Qualifying Year for people that maybe aren't from Canada, or maybe they are living in Canada but never attended a CUC and don't really know what that's about? So can you talk about what the World's Qualifying Year is for our Canadian Ultimate Championships?
Yeah, I'll give it my best shot. So World qualifying year, to qualify for Worlds, you have to attend Canadian Nationals. And you not only have to attend, you have to either win or come top 4 or top 5, depending if it's World Club or World Ultimate and Gus Championships. So you have to show up and you have to do well. So there's an immense amount of pressure for teams coming in, especially because they're every 4 years or every 2 alternating years. And yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Mr. Hibbert there, Morgan?
So this was just like in terms of the meaning of it for us, or
Yeah, the meaning of it for sure. Yeah, like what it means for teams that, what teams go, anything like that. Any more information you could add for us there?
I think, Sarah gave a really good overview of it. The only thing I would add is just the added eyes on you and the tournament leads to an internal excitement unlike any other. You know, there's certainly pride on the line every time you go to CUCs, and winning it is great, but you win it and then it's over, right? Whereas this, winning it means something more. There's a next step that contributes to it. So there's an added pressure that adds to the excitement than of the actual event that makes it feel just a little bit more special.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I remember when I was first playing club, when it was a non-Worlds qualifying year, I really enjoyed CUCs almost more because it felt like we had more close games, less like big blowouts. And then now that I'm a bit more competitive, the Worlds qualifying years are so much more exciting. And I know you both have been playing top level ultimate for a while. Has your team ever opted out of CUCs because it wasn't a Worlds qualifying year? And if you could describe kind of how that conversation went down, was it like just, yes, you weren't going to attend, or was it something that you debated back and forth? And what were some of the things that led you to make that decision? Let's start with you, Morgan.
Yeah. It's certainly gotten more complicated in the more recent years. We've certainly opted out. With the added pressures of the USAU series, including mandatory tournaments, it became less of a discussion. And sometimes it was kind of a no-brainer, unfortunately. Like, we often would have a tournament as Furious in America on the same weekend as CUCs. And if we did not go to that American tournament, we would not be allowed to play in the fall series. And we would try a lot with USAU to get them to waive that for us. And it just never would get approved. And it was on one of those that's like, unfortunately, the decision was easy, but also hard, like, I guess, emotionally hard, logically easy, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Previous to that, and that's been a conflict quite a lot, actually. And it's amazing that you think the summer's big and somehow every year they seem to conflict. Previous to that, it would kind of come down to a bit of a cost factor, unfortunately. Just,
right.
The benefit versus the cost, and can we make it work or not? And we would try, we would go to some non-Worlds qualifying CUCs because I love CUCs. I've had an amazing time. It's an amazing event. It's a really special event no matter what. But unfortunately we have to pay for everything we do, and you got to make hard choices sometimes, and it kind of sucks.
Definitely relate. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah. Same with Morgan, we've definitely opted out. And with the, in the States, they have the Triple Crown Tour, and that only came into effect, I think, in 2013. So kind of prior to 2013, teams kind of had the chance to play a summer series and then a fall series. So a lot of teams went to CUCs because that was the summer series. And then, you'd kind of have a different team that was going to play in the fall. And then 2013 came around, the Triple Crown Tour, and then mandatory tournaments came throughout the summer. And like Morgan said, there's conflicts, and, teams are going to choose kind of the more competitive tournament to go to. And right now, those are mainly in the States. And yeah, so it's not a season that's kind of split up in two. It's one very long season. And then when you add in like a world qualifying year, then you have what we call like the dreaded double peak season. So, you're peaking in August, and then you have maybe a week to like decompress from that, and then kind of focus on the fall and like peaking again in October. So it's definitely way more challenging now, and it also adds a financial burden when, especially if nationals are in the West and you're in the East. There's an extra flight involved. So yeah, so definitely more difficult now.
Mm-hmm. And related to that, we talk about sort of, the top tier teams, but there are also going to be teams that are kind of in the middle or like third tier that end up going to CUCs in the non-Worlds years, let's say. So how do you think the Worlds qualifying year impacts those teams that aren't necessarily playing in the States, but they're kind of the top teams in Canada or kind of in the middle? So maybe we'll start with Sarah.
Mm-hmm. I would say like CUCs is very inconsistent because of our close proximity to the States and our ability to play there. Just year after year, it's not going to be the same. Like I also, like Morgan, love going to CUCs. You get to see all your friends. You get like some good competition. You get to see how Canadian teams have kind of like improved over the years. Like right now there are, I would say like 4 or 5 teams per division that are like top contenders. And before that was maybe 2 or 3. And, they probably see, elite teams coming in, like they're probably annoyed about that, like us just coming in and being there and trying to vie for the top spot. But I don't really see that changing, unfortunately. Like teams are just going to choose to go where the competition is.
And Morgan, do you have any thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends what your motivations are. Your motivations to win or the motivations to get better. For me personally, I'm always seeking out, wherever the best is, because that's going to make me better. And, it's hard, I guess, because I've only ever been in one shoe. So to try to put myself in the other shoe, it's hard to speak for these other teams, but I would, my guess would be that you'd relish the opportunity to play against better competition to test yourself. How good do you really know you are when you're only playing against similar level components, and, to really test yourself against what's supposedly the best is the best way to see where do you actually stack up in your program. And are you one of those elite programs? And, hopefully it's something that is exciting for other teams to be able to, regardless of the circumstances, set it up. An opportunity is an opportunity, and to take advantage of that opportunity is always going to make you better, even if you maybe didn't like the way it came about, is hopefully an attitude that people adopt.
Yeah, no, I have like this distinct memory of, I think it was the third women's team in Vancouver. And I think they were maybe the only women's team that ended up going to CUCs that year. And so then they ended up earning the bid for the following year. But then I think it landed on a World's qualifying year. And so then the number 1 and number 2 teams were wanting to go. And it seemed like that number 3 team, that the event that they're most looking forward to is CUCs, and they might actually get edged out because of that. I don't know if there's anything either of you have experienced seeing something like that happen in your regions, or if you know of any kind of conversations that happens kind of more at the Ultimate Canada level to alleviate those things from happening. Morgan, do you have anything specific, or we can ask Sarah as well?
Yeah, I could start. I've had a lot of these conversations with members of the Ultimate Canada committees about, encouraging teams like GOAT and Furious and Traffic and Sixers, etc., to come to CUCs and what can incentivize them. And the way the bid structure is right now, the way they do it, doesn't actually incentivize teams like us to come, and actually punishes or hurts the teams that do go on a regular basis. And so, you can do it. You can wish all you want that people are going to follow the way things you want them to, but in the end, they're going to do things the way they want to. And if your incentives are not working, they're not working, and you just got to change it. You can't be so stubborn to stick with them and just be like, well, they should. So I've had a lot of sort of philosophical conversations with them about that, and about thinking about, if you want to change this, if you want to alleviate this exact problem like you talked about, Danny, where a team went, they got a bid, and then next year they weren't able to qualify even though they wanted to, you've got to rethink how you want to address that issue. And I don't think the current structure right now does that, unfortunately, because you're just relying on the goodwill, so to speak, of these other teams. And goodwill would be great. I'd love to be able to do that, but and the reality is, unfortunately, money comes into play, right? If we had infinite funds, we could, but we don't. And so we got to be a little bit more realistic, I think, about all that.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but yeah, if we could go, we probably would, but then it's a money thing, and it's hard on the body to like add in 2 other tournaments, like regionals and nationals, already to your packed schedule. And I feel for those teams that work so hard and then at regionals they don't qualify. I think it's just becoming harder because there are a lot of teams in Ontario, a lot more women, open and mixed teams. So I don't know what the solution is, unfortunately.
So one of the questions I have related to this is because I had these conversations with other people that play in the ultimate community in Ontario. And one suggestion, this is going to be maybe a hot take that they had, is that they never require these top elite teams to go. So like you never have to go to CUCs and like make a world's, and we'll talk about world team selection in a bit, but never have to go, or they have to go every year. If like they have to go to the previous one to then be able to go to the world's qualifying year CUCs. So that's a hot take for you. I'm not sure which one of you wants to jump on that one first, but Danny, I think we promised some spicy takes on this episode. So we did say that on our preview from last week. So we're giving you the goods now. So I don't know who wants to jump in on that question, but that's a hot take. Either you always have to go or you never have to go.
I mean, it's probably fair to to always go, but that's not going to happen. Like, if like we got some sort of sponsor, if Ultimate Canada came across, won the lottery and was just like, here, come to our tournament. I don't know. I don't really have a spicy answer.
Yeah, that's okay.
I can give it a shot. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was just talking about incentives. I don't believe you can ever tell anybody or force anybody to do something. It's just not going to work. If you really want it to work, right? You've got to incentivize people to want to do it, and that'll build a better result in the end. So one of those things I've sort of like proposed, not officially, but is reducing the requirement of teams having to go. And again, just being like accepting that there is real conflicts out there where sometimes you have to make these hard decisions, but actually making a requirement more on the players. So when the teams get picked, these world's teams, maybe 50% of the players had to have played at CUCs in the previous 2 years. And so you're not forcing anybody to do anything, but you're just saying, when you're selecting this team, you have to have taken people who are playing in the circuit. And that kind of incentivizes people to be like, well, hey, I'm a player and I really want to be on this team, Team Canada. A good way for me to be able to do that is to make sure I'm in that 50% of qualification people who's been to both events. And now that puts me in the special pool. And it also still allows certain players, if you can't go, you can't go. We're not totally penalizing you, but we're kind of trying to find some way in here to really incentivize that way. That's kind of, it's got to be something like that. You got to dangle the carrot, and people are going to want to get that carrot. And you do that, people will do it, and I think it'll work out. But if you just like hit people over the back of the head, you're going to get resistance. So it sounded like a gong in the background. I was like, great idea, Morgan. There's a gong. I don't know if the camera.
A train, but.
A train.
All right, that's a terrible idea. There's a train wreck is what it was, and there's a train coming through. Yeah.
Nobody likes that.
The train's for me. I live in New West now, and Aiden now has to keep the train sound in the podcast so that this makes sense, which I love. Keep the trains in. The people want to hear the trains.
Yeah,
okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that timing was amazing. Thanks, Martin,
Yeah, it was.
for sharing that. And same thing with you, Bob. I kind of want to know a little bit about like the more positive aspects to the world's qualifying years and having all of those top teams kind of there at that event, and kind of want to blend that into the same question for you both. You're both like of your favorite memories that you've also had at CUCs during these events. Cause I know I have been in one of the games, which was a qualifier for who would select the national team. But I also remember watching some epic games that was deciding who was going to be the Team Canada representative. And it's some of my favorite memories as an observer. So I would love to hear from you, Bob, first, if you have any like specific highlights that are like the most epic for you.
Mm-hmm. I think that like the most nervous I get is like playing at CUCs because there's so much on the line. Like there's so much pressure on those world qualifying years because it means that you'll be, going to worlds, and it's an enormous amount of pressure. And out of pressure comes, I think, a lot of very good ultimate, because everyone's, bringing out their best. So a really great memory, kind of recent memory for me is 2017 CUCs in Ottawa, in my hometown. And it was only our second year of Sixers, so we were the underdogs. So, when you're the underdog, there's a little bit less pressure, but like you still want to show people, like, hey, this is a new team and there's a lot of new talent. Like, I think that we can do really well. And we far exceeded my expectations by winning and by beating Traffic that year, which it was like such an amazing feeling being kind of like an underdog and just like really grinding with like the whole team and winning. And that was a club year. So club years are a bit less pressure because I think the top 3 or sometimes top 4 teams go. But that was just like an amazing feat to like work, like rebuild as a team, and then take the number 1 spot. So that was really exciting.
Yeah, I remember when Sixers came on the scene, it was like a burst. Everyone all of a sudden was super excited, and it was all over social media. The jerseys were super exciting. So I definitely remember that. And yeah, y'all made noise immediately. It was very cool to see.
I mean, I wasn't expecting it to have such a spike. Like I thought, okay, here we go. Like this is going to be a slow grind. Like this is a new team, we're rebuilding, but
nope.
Yeah, no, yeah, which is great. Cause like at the end of your career, you're just like, okay, this is like a lot to like rebuild and like be in this situation, but that wasn't the case. So
yeah, y'all did really well. How about you, Morgan?
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a 2-parter, and the first it goes back probably 2011 was probably my favorite, and part of the reason why that is we're I think really quite used to seeing video of Frisbee nowadays. There's quite a lot, but it's a pretty recent thing. It wasn't that long ago that there was barely any coverage, and if there was, it was months later, and it was like hard to get. And this was kind of still around that time. It was still like video was kind of getting going. Kolakovic didn't exist. I mean, he did exist. He was a human. He was alive, but he didn't exist in terms of the way we know him. Video.
10 years old.
Yeah. And so people, would, especially this, I'll speak to my experience, which would make sense because it's your question. But like with Furious, we would go to this event, and a lot of times it was the first time people would ever get to actually see us in person or like on video, or if they'd seen us on video, it was like small amounts previous years or whatever. And I just noticed that while we were warming up, and you looked around the adjacent fields and nobody else was warming up because they were just watching us, because they were really curious. Like, how did these guys warm up? What did they do? And it was really kind of surreal to have all these eyes on you the whole time, and you're in like the breakfast room, like eating breakfast, and you can like feel, you can feel people just like looking at you, and you're like, oh, they're watching what I'm eating. I better like put down this like, strawberry croissant and pick up a fruit or something like that. Set a good example.
Set a good example.
Right. And just like kind of like, oh, this does matter. people that exposure. And then the second part of that is, years later, hearing from people who vividly remember playing a game against you, and they're like, yeah, you probably don't remember. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I do. I'm sorry. I'm terrible memory. But they're like, well, remember everything about that game against you and everything. And just re-emphasizing, our presence matters there. And, it just is really cool because you don't really think of yourself as really like anything that special, and we still aren't, but it's a cool thing to hear that impact by being there.
And maybe that goes back to like the other question about us, or about elite teams coming in only on world qualifying years. But having those players play against like some of the best in Canada, it does have an impact on them. Like you said, Morgan, it's like, hey, I played against you in 2011. You're like, whoa, cool. But that does have an impact, like as yourself as a person. Like I remember playing for the first time in the States and playing against like the big names and like trying to play defense, or playing offense and like being like, wow, I have to play 110%. Like I have to run the fastest I've ran just to catch the Frisbee or to catch up to this person. So it does make an impact, I think, on when you're playing against really, really great talent.
I remember, maybe you specifically didn't want to call this out, Morgan, but I do remember it seemed like every single time I was watching a finals in the open division, Furious was losing and getting the poop crack kicked out of them a little bit, and then they would win. And I'm surprised you didn't choose any of those memories. Maybe you're trying to like salvage the egos of some of your homies, but there's some like very, very epic comeback wins that I remember.
Comebacks. Yeah. What's the trick?
Teach us.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, they're all, for sure, super positive, but I guess the reason why I didn't pick those was just because those are kind of the obvious ones. And I mean that like both externally, but also like internally, like obviously that's like really valuable, but it's, it's when you get surprised that kind of sticks out, right? Like having a big win, I already know that's going to feel good and that feels important to me. It's the interactions with people that kind of catch you off guard, that surprise you, and that those end up just like, they end up etched in your memory. And I remember all those just as vividly as like every interaction I've had with someone who came up and said, hi, like it was a pleasure to play against you, or it was really cool to like watch you or whatever. It stays in my memory just as vividly as any comeback victory, as amazing as they are.
Yeah, appreciate the memories though that you shared. And now we're going to talk the actual team selection. So maybe some more spicy takes are going to come in. But first, we got to switch over to kind of an education podcast for a second and just tell people what the selection process even looks like. Because we've talked about Worlds qualifying years a lot, but what does that actually mean for selecting the national team? So, Morgan, let's start with you in terms of how does the team selection work? How did it used to work, and has that shifted over time?
Yeah. What if I flip this on you and let Bob speak to the most recent year, because I know she's super familiar with that. And then if you want, I could speak to like the historical aspect, because I probably have a bit more knowledge of what it was like back in the day, because I was still around then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yep. Yeah. So, wow, 2019 feels like a lifetime ago. But yeah, so in 2019, Sixers won Canadian Nationals. So we had the privilege to choose Team Canada for the 2020 World Championships. So the requirements are that you have to take 7 out of province or out of region players. I think that, correct me if I get anything wrong, but yeah, 7, and it used to be 5 and now it's 7. And what we did as a Sixers is we chose kind of part of the selection committee. We had one representative from each of like the top 3 women's teams. So we had Bosch from Iris, Chewy from Traffic, and myself and Jordo from Sixers, along with our coaches, Carla and Elena. So we kind of wanted to have all that representation, and we also wanted to have people that knew their players, because we don't necessarily know everyone from all of the teams, all the women's teams in Canada. So we really wanted to have a cross-Canadian knowledge base. And then from there, we chose a roster of, I think, 24 players. And I think we were well represented from across the country, with a little bit more emphasis in Ontario, I guess. We were from the Sixers, but we were trying to make a true Canadian team and get the top talent from across the country.
Well, I can speak a little bit to sort of, I guess, what ours was, which is basically exactly the same as Bob, and then the historical thing. From the Furious' perspective, so we won. We picked 3 selection members from Furious, and then we knew we wanted 2 from GOAT, and so we asked them to self-nominate. Who do you guys want to represent you on the selection committee? We didn't want to just pick ourselves. We thought, because we really were trying to create a unified, harmonized team from the very beginning, and so we thought as a first step, like, well, who do you want to represent you on this committee was sort of a first step, and try to lead towards then a very like collaborative approach as much as we possibly could. Now, historically, it's quite interesting. If you think about what as unruled and regulated as you can get to what it is today is kind of what it was. So like way back, it was just when you won, that was it. You won and you were Team Canada. Done. Then it kind of was like kind of around, I guess, like 2003, you won. You still got to be Team Canada, but you had to add 3 out of region players to your team. That was it. There's no selection committee. There wasn't even like tryouts or anything like that, right? It was just like, okay, just add 3. And then come 2007, it was still kind of basically like that. You know, if you won, you were that was it. You were Team Canada, but you had to add 5 out of region players now. Then in 2011 was the first time where when you won, you didn't get to be the team. You got to pick the selection committee, and the selection committee got to pick the team. However, there was no guidelines over who was on the selection committee. So you could just pick all 5 people from the winning team if you wanted. And I think what we did in that time in Furious, I can't remember the exact numbers. We either had, I think we had 3, and then we asked John Hassel from GOAT to join it. But we weren't required to. And then come 2015, now it became a bit more like, okay, you have to have at least, you pick the selection committee, but you have to have someone from a different region on the selection committee, and you have to have 5 out of region. And then now you get to this time round where it got bumped up, you have to have 7 out of region. And that's kind of the quick and dirty of the transition from then to now.
No.
In 2011, oh, sorry, Danny.
No, you go for it.
In 2011, when Capitals won, it was very much like Capitals is Team Canada going, and they took like the minimum, like the 5 out of province, out of region. So it was just like interesting to kind of see that development, like kind of in like 10 years, like just that, like going from like a team mentality, like this team is going, to like, okay, this is like a true Team Canada now, like kind of, becoming less of a wild west and
Wild West.
Yeah, like for our team, what would have been the men's team that didn't happen, in terms of, since Furious had 1 CUCs, but there was less Furious people on the team than out of region players. So we had more out of region players than we had Vancouver players in the team as a whole. Just
2020
on the theme of Bob. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, like, I can understand the argument for both sides. Having nationwide tryouts where you take the top players from across the nation, like that logically makes sense to me, but so does the argument that if, say, Sixers wins and the core of Team Canada is able to actually train together and already knows the same systems and is comfortable with that coach, I can see the benefit to that too. Now, Sarah, we'll start with you because I'm using the Sixers example. Mm-hmm. Which do you think produces a better result potentially at Worlds?
Ooh, good question, Danny. Let's go. Let's go.
I live for your praise, Theo.
Let's get the spice going. Come on.
We definitely talked about that on the selection committee this time around. You know, it's like we already have like these systems in place, but then we kind of chose people that could make those systems better. You know, like people that could easily integrate into our vert strategy. You know, people that could just like seamlessly kind of just like hop on a team and just like make us that much better. So we did have quite a large core of the team that was in the East, so in like Toronto and Quebec. So we were planning on getting together more often with that side in 2020, so that we could kind of gel a bit more, and then just having those like other elite players come in. Because I think like once you reach a high enough level, you're just able to kind of just work with certain players. And also I think that with the addition of like U20s, U24s, just those players having played together already together, because there are so many opportunities to play nationally now for when you're young. I think that, you know, like I played with this person, or, you know, I've played with like these groups. So I think it's a bit easier now, kind of with having more national teams and just being an elite player and being able to just hop onto a team.
Morgan, any spice?
I got a spicy response for you, Theo. So
let's go. I got more questions for you though. I got another one coming. So
I mean,
let's start with your answer.
I won't get tired talking, so don't worry. I actually think our current model is outdated now. I think all the models have made sense at the time. You know, you go way back in the day, coaches weren't a thing. Ultimate Canada was small. It just like from a logistics standpoint made sense. The winning team, you just deal with it because we don't have the infrastructure or the support to be able to deal with a national team. You need to just handle everything. So please do. And as the sport has grown, our organization has grown, our sophistication in Ultimate Canada has grown. As we've moved to these different models, they've made sense. It started to be a bit more collaborative. It's, you know, the talent isn't just in one city. It's in a couple cities. And even now, I think it's in even more cities. Like, and again, I'll speak specifically to the men's team, but we were looking at talent from multiple different cities in the country and would have been more diverse if we weren't also competing with each other, say like with the mixed team and things like that. Right. I think the model as it is now has served its purpose, but it's done. And I see no reason why for the next cycle, we shouldn't go to the same model that we pick our U20 teams, our U24 teams, our World Games team, which is there's enough experienced people in Canada now to form a coach selection committee to pick the coaches, and then the coaches have tryouts and pick their teams from scratch, just like we do everything else. And that's something that I've been loosely proposing because it wasn't going to be able to happen in time for the most recent cycle. But now we've got 3 years that I'm actually planning on. That's something that's one of my sort of internal mandates, personal mandates that I'm trying to get for the next go round.
So how would
a little insider knowledge?
I have a question.
The insider, we need that. We need the insider knowledge. This is great. Good stuff.
What would be the incentive then to go to Canadian Nationals? Like what?
So that's kind of where this player qualification model comes in. So it's a great question. And that's exactly the pushback I got from other people was then why would any teams come? My sort of response was like, well, whatever you're doing now isn't really working anyways. We only come once every 4 years and you're not happy with that. Like it's not necessarily much worse if we don't ever come. So let's think of something else. And so that's my sort of loose, back of the napkin proposal was what if we have a player related qualification thing that, if you have to pick 50% of your team has been to the past 2 CUCs, go of it that way kind of thing. Something there. I'm happy for ideas. Listeners out there in Canada, if you got any ideas, shoot me a message. I'd love to hear it. I want to come up with a solution that is just better for Canada and produces better Ultimate Canada teams as well as competition within Canada going forward.
Yeah, Morgan, you just brought some really hot takes, Sarah, as well. Both of you bringing the hot takes, which we wanted and promised you in the audience. So I believe we did deliver. I will say that. I think we delivered. But I have even another question related to this. Because we talk about out of region. Let's say we go with the I won't call it the trademark Morgan Hibbert model or anything like that, because it probably wouldn't be called that. But let's just say this model takes shape. Some people might argue then there should be some sort of policy in place where people from certain areas, like let's say Maritimes, there needs to be like a couple players from there, even if they're going to be, there might not be, but let's say they're the 22nd, 23rd person on the roster, or wherever small like province that doesn't usually get represented. What do you think about that? Would that be like a viable thing for, I'd ask Sarah or Morgan to answer. Do you think that'd be a viable thing to require? Is it fair to require players from certain provinces to be on these teams, or is it just going to end up being a lot of Vancouver, Toronto, Quebec, etc.? Like, what do we think about that?
That's tough. Ideally you want representation from each region of Canada, but in the end you got to go with who the best players are. Like, at the beginning you have to say, are we going for like the most diverse, like geographically diverse team, or are we, in this to win and we're taking like the best players? And you're probably going to go with taking the best players, but that being said, there's great talent everywhere, and it's hard for, I think, players that are not in like a hot spot, like a hot, ultimate spot. They're not seen as much, and if they come to tryouts, they have to prove even more than players that are seen. So I feel for them because it's harder for them to get onto those teams.
Yeah, I'm with Sarah, and I'm probably going to be less politically correct than Sarah, but I hate the out-of-region rule. I think it's super dumb. I don't think it makes any sense. I really did not understand why it got increased from 5 to 7. No one could explain the rationale behind it to me that made any sense. And the reason that is, it's conflicting priorities. What's your priority? Are you trying to build the best team possible to go win a world championship? Or are you trying to develop the talent pool in Canada? Those are two different things to me, and now you're mixing them, and I don't think you're doing either correctly. By forcing out-of-region players, you're potentially not taking someone who has earned the right through talent and skill and work and whatnot to be on the team, and weakening your team by taking someone just because they live somewhere else. And also, is that actually helping to develop the talent pool nationally? And so I think you got to separate those problems, and I believe it's really important to improve the talent nationally and in these different spots, but making players join the national team is not accomplishing that. So let's actually try to accomplish that in a specific targeted way. And let's also, get our priorities sorted out about what the national team is, which should be the best possible players in Canada representing this country to go win a medal. And so I think that should just be.
Do you think that's the same thing at the U20 and U24 level, that they should be picking the top 24 players across the nation, no matter where they're from, or that at the more junior level, there should be potentially a couple spots left for anomaly regions?
Ideally, it should be the same in that you just pick the best possible. Whoever's the best earns it, and try to come up with development camps or things like that improve the talent, like opportunities, ways for these players in these different players to get that same exposure and experience to develop and improve. I don't think it's necessarily the national team is the way to go. That being said, we do have to be a little bit realistic in terms of resources, both in people, time, and finances wise, that can cause some complications. But fundamentally, I'd like to find a better solution and at least try to think of one.
Morgan, Sarah, Morgatron, as you're known, Bob, we appreciate you coming in, giving us some spicy takes. People throughout Canada, they might have, differing opinions. Hopefully we can get some discussion going on the YouTube, maybe on Reddit, I don't know, wherever people like to talk, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. So thank you both for coming in today and just sharing your wisdom and experience and opinions.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Thanks, friends.
Yeah, so stick around for our Beaver Tales segment. We got Becky Thompson coming on. She's played for Team Canada. She's commentated for Ultimate Canada and WIFDIF, so pretty excited to have her on. Now she's taking her talents out to the UK. So we're going to have her on for a special Beaver Tales segment, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again, Morgan and Sarah, for coming on, and we'll see you over in the Beaver Tales segment.
Beavers unite.
Welcome everyone to our Beaver Tales segment. We have Becky Thompson here, and I'm very, very excited by this Beaver Tale. I've been able to work with Becky before. It was my first time ever commentating a game, and Becky was trying to give me pointers, and I was really, really bad at it, but Becky's really, really good. So Becky, I'm happy to have you here. Can you introduce yourself to our audience, and also congratulations, because you're going to be winning some sick Huckin Eh merch from VC, and I don't know how we're going to get it to you, but we will. We'll make it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's a tricky one now, Danny. I will say that is a trickier. That's a trickier situation this time, but we'll figure out a way.
Minor details. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm Becky, as you said, and I'm originally from Vancouver, but currently living in London, England. So I'm a beaver abroad, as I'm calling it at this point.
Let's go.
Can you explain to us a little bit about your ultimate career, both playing and also career-wise, like actual career?
On the mic too. On the mic.
Yeah. So I started playing when I was 12, about like 13, almost 14 years ago now, in high school, and have played kind of for club teams across Canada and internationally now as well. I didn't really commit to Frisbee until university, probably because I was playing soccer as well. So I always played it, but I kind of got competitive with it later in life. So I played for some club teams in Vancouver, Saskatchewan, Ontario, did stuff all over Canada playing wise, played Team Canada U24s back in 2018 in Perth with the mixed team, got to captain that team, which was an amazing experience. And my twin sister was on the women's U24 team that cycle as well. So pretty cool to share that with her. Then moved over to the UK, and I've been playing here ever since, playing with Team GB as well, which we didn't get to go to Worlds last year because of COVID, but still actually surprisingly feels as cool to represent GB as it does Canada, which I never thought I'd say beforehand, but that's been really good. So now I work in Frisbee as well. I worked for Ultimate Canada for a couple of years and been commentating since 2016. I've commentated the Club World Championships, USAU Club Championships, Under 24 Worlds in 2019, quite a few events. Absolutely love it. I've currently stepped away from it just to focus on playing, because commentating every event does take away from actually competing in the events. And I'm not quite ready to hang up my boots yet. And then I also do a lot of other work in Ultimate in terms of coaching. I'm currently coaching a women's development team in London. I coach juniors in Canada as well. And then I do volunteer work with like the European Ultimate Federation Board and various other things as well. So I'm very Frisbee, as my friends would describe me. I'm slightly obsessed with it. So that's me.
Now, I know Theo's a little jealous of your career. So Theo, I don't know if you have any questions about like how to get to where Becky's at right now, because that's kind of where you're aiming for, right?
Yeah, we were talking about this off air. Like, Becky's a trailblazer, right? Commentating in Canada, then commentating USAUs, and then on the world stage. So, Becky, before we even start your story, do you have any advice for aspiring commentators, people that want to get on the mic for Ultimate or any sport? What would you say is like your main advice for them?
The best advice I was ever given is just do it, volunteer to do it, and don't, you want to get paid. Of course, you want to get paid for your work, but the best thing I ever did was get on a flight and go to the US Open, and show up to Ulti World and say, hi, I'm here. Basically just make myself available to do it. So I say, just absolutely just go and do it. Just show up at an event. Do all the other little things as well. Instead of commentating, like offer to go get coffees, make yourself indisposable, and people will love you and they'll want to ask you back every time. My best advice is just go why not? At the end of the day, you're there watching a great Frisbee tournament. So there's really like a no-lose situation, I think.
Theo, I don't see you taking notes right now, and I think that's a mistake. Step one.
I'm taking those mental notes, you know, okay. So, and I can watch this recording later. So there you go. That's where the notes come in.
That's
saved
true.
Forever.
Okay, Becky, I know you've got a great story for us and for everybody, and we'd love for you to just dive right in.
Yeah. So I think what I wanted to talk about today is just kind of the experience of moving over to a new country, and leaving the Canadian Frisbee community behind, because as big as Canada is, it feels like such a close-knit community. Like people out, and you go to nationals and you run into your friends from all across the country. And I really didn't know if that would be the same moving over to the UK. I kind of hoped it would. You know, Frisbee is a amazing community around the world, but I was leaving a lot of my friends and my teams behind. So when I moved over here, I joined a team called SICK, first of all. And they were incredibly, SYC, and I can't tell you what it stands for. Unfortunately, okay. It's a PPF situation. But
oh no, one of those? Oh man,
we can't tell you what it stands for.
Oh no! Oh,
but they were incredibly welcoming, and I'll never forget the best moment was this girl Alex Nevitt, call her Nev, walked straight up to me and was like, "I'm from Canada," and I was like, "I'm from Canada," and we like immediately like bonded over that. And I think the best thing is that that's continued through every kind of tournament or thing I've gone to. So we're pretty lucky over here right now that Ultimate's opened back up and we're playing games against other teams, with sideline stall count, which is the only weird thing. But other than that, we're playing Frisbee again, and we were playing a game against a mixed team 2 weekends ago. And there's this guy on the pitch who I'd never seen before in my life. And he made a joke, and he was just like bantering on the pitch. And he's like, "Oh, we look like Winnipeg General Strike right now." And I was like, You're Canadian? Who are you? We need to talk. And we're like the middle of running around on the point. And we were both just like trying to have a conversation about where we're from in the middle of the point.
That's so funny.
And then, sat down on the sideline and talked for half an hour. He's from Newmarket. He moved over here with his wife. Like, it's just, those feelings are really great because you feel like you're so far away, but you're never that far away, especially with Ultimate. It just brings you back together. So I think that's my experience coming here has been amazing. And there's just Canadians everywhere, especially in Ultimate, which is wild. So.
Wait, can you explain to people why he would have said that?
I don't
For those that don't know.
I mean.
Oh, come on.
I'm trying to figure that out too.
What was the context of the game? Because maybe our audience can help figure it out like detectives.
Yeah.
I mean, they had just hucked it and turned it over, I believe. I think that might have been the context.
Oh no! Oh no!
It was obviously he never played for them, so he was definitely making a joke about Winnipeg. But it was quite funny in the moment. I think I was the only person on the pitch who had any idea what he was talking about.
Yeah, that would have been really bizarre just to hear out of nowhere. You're like, wait, what? And just kind of sends you back home for a second, and kind of out of the blue. So I can imagine that would be, I don't know, like that would feel nice, I guess, kind of like home a little bit.
It does. It really does feel like home, and it makes you feel like, you've got a little bit of that just support and understanding, because people, the longer I live here and the more friends I have here, I think people forget that I'm not from here, and forget that I'm actually quite far away from home. And I do plan on staying here, but I miss it, and I miss my family and my friends. And so when you hear someone, even with just the same accent as you, it feels really, really good. So it's cool when that happens on the Frisbee pitch.
Yeah, we were talking accents off air as well. Like, I wanted to know if you picked up an English accent, but clearly you kept it Canadian, so living overseas there. But a question I had too is, what are some of the main differences in terms of the Ultimate, maybe even just terminology or just how things are run in the UK compared to Canada? Because you said, for example, stepping on the pitch, and I probably would never say that. I would say I was playing with someone on the field. Like, I would never say pitch. So that's probably an example. But do you have more examples of that?
Because I'm starting to get good at using their terminology now. But I still don't get it sometimes. So like they call their cleats are called boots over here. It's always the pitch. They call a flick a sidearm a lot of the time. So it's a sidearm throw.
Yeah.
A lot of people are starting to say forehand now because every time someone says that, I'm like, what? What are we talking about? So I think that's quite entertaining. They say stall out instead of stall down. There's a few they're all small changes, like small differences. And I'd say the biggest difference is really just the community here is smaller, and a lot of people start in university rather than in junior level, which they do in Canada. So people come to the sport quite late, and they come to try something new, which is awesome. But not everybody has a competitive background, so there's definitely a much more kind of play to enjoy it community over here. But the competitive community it's definitely growing, and it's pretty exciting, especially now that we're back playing as well.
Well, I feel like you probably have a plethora of stories to share, and I don't want to give away too many of them because we're going to be going on a deep dive with you in our subscriber only section. We're going to have Becky in the hot seat, and we're going to learn her ultimate crush. You're going to have to prep this maybe now, and some other like spicy questions where she's going to have to throw some shade at teammates. So if you're interested in hearing all that Becky has to offer us in the subscriber only section, subscribe to Ulti World. Get that subscription. There's lots of fun stuff that you can do with it. And we'll see you over there. And we just want to say thanks, Becky, for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, Beaver party tonight.
Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to episode 6. It was super awesome having all of you. Next week, we're going to be starting our Canadian Classic series by hearing from Darren Wu and Nathan Hurst about their epic game at 2014 WJUC in Lecco, Italy. And that is the juniors tournament. And it's against Team USA. So really, really excited to hear from them. If you've seen the game, you know it's a classic. If you haven't seen the game, tune in and you'll hear all about it.
Yeah, I'd say in anticipation of the episode, Danny, is you should watch the game before you listen to our episode. Because then when Darren and Nate talk about it and talk about, what led up to the tournament, the game itself, you'll be well informed. You'll be like, all right, I know all this. So I'm super excited for it. I know you are, Danny, because that's an epic game of recent memory there for us. Pretty awesome time. So tune in for that. As always, we got to plug our stuff. So check us out on Instagram. What is it? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can like and subscribe to Ulti World. Get a subscription from them as well. And you can always submit messages to us. We've been getting some messages, Danny. So some input on what we should cover. We love that. So please keep doing it. You can also email us at huckinA@ultiworld.com. And you can reach out to us that way as well. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
This is Nick House from Regiment Ultimate in St. John's, Newfoundland. You're listening to the Huckin Eh Podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.